Very important question, and I think a lot of people perhaps have not thought about it. Do you actually have your affairs in order should death strike? If you haven't, it's National Wills Week. It should give you ample time to sort out and update the affairs of your estate. Let's get the importance of this. Commercial Manager of Personal Finance for JustMoney, it's Sarah Nicholson, joining us this morning via Skype. Hello to you, Sarah. Thanks for your time. I think some people, when they hear about having to do their will, if they don't have one, they don't know where to start. It just seems like so much admin.
It does. And you know, the most amazing thing about it is that it's actually really easy to initially set up. A will is something that you can get from, especially now during Wills Week, you can get from a stationery shop. You can get it for free now during Wills Week. You can get hold of quite a few lawyers that would be able to draft it up for you for free. And you know, you just really need to start. Just start at one point. And what we've learned during the impact of COVID is that it's really changed the value of many of our assets. So it's important that it's something that we address. The COVID has reminded us that, you know, many things have changed, and it's a good time to make a change to your will. If you have one already, make sure that it's up to date, or if you haven't got one, then take the time to actually set one up.
Sarah, I'm so glad you mentioned the suggestion of going to a stationery store. Perhaps it's just me, maybe others share the sentiment. I always thought writing up a will was quite a complicated process. You had to have a lawyer, you had to have documents that were certified, go to the bank, get credit notes from the various creditors that you owe money to. So if I go to a stationery store and I get a will, I just buy it over the counter. What kind of information is it going to want from me if I want to leave my estate to my wife and my parents? What do I actually put down on this piece of paper?
So the complexities of the will really depends on your assets. So if you've got large amount of assets and there's a lot of complexities around that, then it's always recommended to get a lawyer to help you draft it. If it's fairly simple, then it's something you can do yourself. There's even online platforms that will actually have all the right questions that you need, or you obviously will have the template from the stationery stores that you can then go and fill in. What's important and what we need to keep in mind for the South African law and what you need is to make sure that the will is signed by the end, which is by you, the testator, and initialed on every other page. It must also be signed at the end by two competent witnesses who are over the age of 14 and are not set to inherit any benefit in the terms of the will. And they've also got to initial it on every other page. And then both you and the witnesses must sign all in each other's presence. And that's like the basic requirements of the South African law. But again, it's good. As much as it's good to get, or it's easy enough to get a free will, you also need to remember that if you're doing it, for example, through a bank, who's going to be the executor of the will? And that's probably one of the most important questions. Who's going to be the person that makes sure that your wishes are carried out through that will? And if you do it through a bank or any other company, and they offer that will to you for free at the beginning, they might want to be the executor of your estate, and then they will charge you a percentage of your total overall assets at the end. So you just need to keep that in mind when you're drafting it as well. And ideally, you want to have a choice as to who your executor is, and just be aware of what you're going to be charged.
Can your executor be your significant other or a parent, or does it need to be somebody completely neutral?
No, it can be somebody that is close to you. It is possible. Ideally, it is always better to have somebody that is neutral, because it kind of keeps out the emotions out of the end. You know, everybody's quite upset that this has happened. So it's ideal to try and have a neutral person, but it is possible to have someone that is close to you who is the executor of your estate.
Another question on, I'm still stuck on the stationery one, because I imagine when you go through a lawyer in a bank, obviously they've got their 89 pages of terms and conditions, and you sign an initial every page. The stationery version, the stationery store version, I imagine is simpler. Can you give us some advice about how to make sure that version that you buy from a stationery store is legally sound in a legal framework? Yes, it's signed by, say, me and two other people who cannot benefit from my will, or my debt in this case. But how do I make sure that it's actually legal if the inevitable were to happen?
I would say that you do need to do a little bit of research here, just to make sure that you are that you are 100% sure. It will depend on what your assets are and what you're trying to do. So it will be dependent on what you're trying, well, obviously what you're trying to do in this case. So have a look at the Wills Act 7 of 1953. If you just take a look at that, that kind of highlights what the formal requirements are regarding the execution of the wills, and what's needed inside the will. But the most important thing is that you've got, the simple thing is that having the correct signatures really is what will make sure that your will is executed at the end.
It's very helpful advice. I appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. National Wills Week, very important information, basic information really, to get your will in order. If you don't have one, you can go to a stationery store. All you have to do is sign and get 2 witnesses. It makes sense. Commercial Manager of Personal Finance for JustMoney, Sarah Nicholson, joining us here on eNCA.